let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
What up, what up? This is your boy Rob Clark, welcoming you to the 22 November Network. Get ready for another exciting edition of the Lone Gunman Podcast, featuring me, that's right, your boy Rob Clark, coming at you. Stay tuned. Be right there. Hello, and welcome to the show. What's up, everybody? This is your boy, Rob Clark. We're here on the Lone Gunman Podcast for episode number 41. I hope everyone out there had a very, very good New Year's rockin' Eve. I know I didn't do anything. I stayed in, and I think I was in bed by 10:30. But such things happens when you get older, and you care less about getting hammer timed and things of that nature. You know, you have kids, whatever. It's just another day in my book. And much like Christmas, it's one day off and then back to business. So, not a big deal in my neck of the woods, but hopefully 2014 was a good year for everybody. And 2015 is going to be awesome, bigger and better than ever for everybody out there involved. Today, for episode number 41, we're going to talk a little bit about Harvey and Lee. Now, I'm probably going to have a hell of a lot more questions than I am answers for you guys. And, for the real experts on the case, I would recommend going to check out on Black Op Radio, the archive section, the 7-part John Armstrong interviews. He is the author of the book Harvey and Lee. He is the man behind the idea of Harvey and Lee. But I mean, he's not the first one to suppose that there were two. But he took it further than anybody else did, and his body of research, available at the Pogue Library, even online from Baylor University, is intense. And it's immense, and it's his lifelong work. So, for anybody who wants to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, if you don't have the book, if you haven't read the book, head over to Black Op Radio in the archive section and check out the John Armstrong interviews. Also, coming up on the Dallas Action very, very soon, my buddy Doug Campbell's podcast, the Dallas Action, he is going to have who I believe to be I guess he's taken up the mantle for John Armstrong as far as Harvey and Lee goes. He's very knowledgeable on the subject. He's good with the documents, and that is David Josephs. I mentioned him on this podcast before. He is a researcher of note. I think he's doing good things. He's a good researcher. He sticks with the documents, and he goes where they take him. And you can check out a couple of his articles over on ctka.net. Just search for David Josephs. I know he had a series on there about Oswald in Mexico City. But yeah, so stay tuned for that coming up on the Dallas Action. He's going to have David Josephs on his show. Now me, I'm not an authority by any means. I am not an expert by any means. I did plunk down almost $300 for the book some years ago when it was very, very rare, off of Amazon. But it can now be purchased, I believe, if you go to harveyandlee.net for $85. I believe you can pick up a copy of the book for yourself. And I'm not sure how the new book is working. I'm sure it's the same as the old one. It comes with a CD that has all the accompanying documents and photographs and everything on it. So basically, you can read the book, and if you run into something that you want to check out further, write it down. You head over to the CD-ROM, pop it in your computer, and you can pull up documents and photographs and everything like that. And that is on harveyandlee.net. Okay, that is a site run for John Armstrong, supporting his book. It's got a lot of his writings on there, and because he has written a lot of shorter articles than his book concerning Harvey and Lee. I think his newest one was on Ruby, about there being a double Ruby. One of them, I think he was from the New York area, but he had the same name, Jacob Rubenstein, or Jack Rubenstein. I'm not sure, but it's a very, very informative article, and I checked it out when I was doing my stuff on Ruby. So let's get right down to it. Harvey and Lee. There are staunch believers in the Harvey and Lee scenario, and there are staunch opposers to the theory of Harvey and Lee. And excuse me, where I fall on it, because I have the book, I've read the book. I can understand the conclusions, how they were drawn. Because of course people supposed that there was an Oswald double, okay, or somebody impersonating Oswald in the months leading up to the assassination, maybe in Mexico, maybe in Dallas. But John Armstrong takes it all the way back to grade school, okay? And it's hard to argue with the documents, okay? When you have two sets of school records for two different places, that are overlapping in time. When you have employment records, from when Oswald was a teenager. When you have employment records overlapping in different cities, and you have him working at Pfister Dental Lab when he's already supposedly joined the Marines, it's hard to argue with the documents. And to the people that, it's just one of those things. You can either get lost in the Harvey and Lee rabbit hole. You can follow it down to the bottom, but a lot of people choose to just totally dismiss the whole idea because they don't even want to go there. They immediately dismiss it as a kook idea, that is on the fringes, whatever. But for me personally, even if there isn't or wasn't a Harvey and a Lee, two separate people leading two separate parallel lives, possibly using the same name, one being like to call Harvey and one being like to call Lee. Even if you don't believe that, John Armstrong's book and his research is invaluable to the JFK research community, and that is for certain. Then you get to the question of, okay, well, if it's not a Harvey and it's not a Lee and it's not two separate people, then what exactly are we looking at here? Well, there's also a theory out there that there was some false documents created by our government who... Okay, let me figure out how to put this. They were created by the government when they decided to send Lee Harvey Oswald to Russia as a false defector, so that when people started looking into his background, okay, it'd be hard to actually, pinpoint exactly where this dude was at and when and what he was doing. Also, it would also, if any of this information, the wrong information popped up on any intelligence radar, they would know that they had a mole, and they would be able to trace the documentation back to whoever was the mole, whoever was selling information to the Soviets. So you can see it's a very, very convoluted subject. And of course, when you have a Harvey and a Lee, two separate kids, you need to have two separate mothers. The two Marguerite theory, okay, is also very intriguing. And when you look at, the addresses of where they lived and where she was working at the times, and, you look at this, I don't know, I would probably describe her as a rather tall, attractive lady in her early years, and then she morphs into this short, fat, kind of frumpy looking woman. It's very odd how somebody within, say, 5 years could go from looking a certain way to, basically shrinking and gaining a lot of weight. And for those people who say, oh no, Marguerite, didn't shrink. Marina, I think, was like 5 foot tall. Okay. Something to that effect. And, in some of the pictures, Marguerite, and some of them looks even shorter than Marina, like 4'11", something like that. And when you compare a picture of that with her standing next to, I think it was Edwin Ekdahl, who claimed to be, I think it was like 5'11", 6 foot tall. She's almost right up there with him. I'm sure she has heels on and all that, but it's hard to explain away the discrepancies and the differences of the two Marguerites, and one doing a lot of living in Louisiana and New Orleans, and one doing a lot of living in Texas, in Dallas and Fort Worth. It's very, 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 very odd. And we have people like John Pike, who was Oswald's older brother, that claimed in the famous picture of a young, a very young Lee Harvey Oswald at the Bronx Zoo, that he doesn't recognize that kid and doesn't know who that is. It's not his brother. Okay? And when you line up pictures that are supposedly from the exact same time period, okay, in Lee Harvey Oswald's life, like when he's in the Marines, and then he's home on leave at Robert's house, and there's pictures taken, he doesn't look like a Marine. Okay, Marines have a very, very distinct look, a very distinct haircut. It's very, very odd, and at a glance, you could say that they're the same person, but when you really, really start looking at it, the chins are different, the necks are different, the eyes are different. And, if you're to take half of a picture that's supposed to be of Lee Oswald and compare it, I'm talking like, okay, earlier Oswald, things that we know with Lee, okay, like when he first joined the Marines, and you compare it to a picture of the man arrested in Dallas, and you put half of his face together, the features just don't match up. And it's the damnedest thing you ever saw. And you try to figure out and you try to quantify how in the hell, if they pulled this off, how did they fool the family? How did they fool Robert Oswald? How did they fool John Pike? Okay? How did they fool Marguerite Oswald? Well, here's a theory. And this one is totally mine. Okay? So we know with the Oswald brothers, okay, there's a bit of an age gap between them. with John Pike being the oldest. And then we have Robert Oswald, and then we have Lee. Okay. Now, John Pike was probably a good 10 years older than Lee. Robert, I think, was 4 or 5. And I don't even ever know if they were in the same schools as each other at the same time. I don't believe so. But, you know, when Robert, well, John left a long time. As soon as he was old enough to join the force or join the armed forces, he's out the door. As soon as Robert Oswald is old enough to join the armed forces, he's out the door. Okay, and as soon as Lee was old enough to join the armed forces, he's out the door. Okay, but let's go back a little bit. So when John Pike leaves home to go into service, you know, Lee Oswald would have been probably, 7, 8, 9 years old, something like that. He's a kid. Okay, he's a little kid. And as you know, kids change in their appearance as they get older, And so when Robert Oswald leaves to go into service, okay, Lee is like, 11 or 12 years old. Still a kid. Still hasn't hit puberty yet. Okay. Now, the big thing is, and I'm not sure to get into all the specifics of when John and Robert, would have came home to visit on a leave and would have seen Lee. I don't know that. What I'm supposing is, there was big gaps in time, between when Lee saw Robert and John Pike saw Lee and all of this nonsense was going on. And, Lee gets out of the Marine Corps, okay? And he comes back. And, well, no, let's back up a little bit. There was a Thanksgiving dinner. It was a year before. It was a year before the assassination. So, yeah, this would have been right as Lee was getting back from Russia. Because he had Marina with him, and they had the baby June. And nobody had seen Lee Oswald, okay, for 3 or 4 years. Because you have to remember, when Lee got out of the Marine Corps in California on his hardship discharge, he was only sliding through Texas or Louisiana for like 3 days, and he was on a boat and he was gone to go defect. And I don't even know if he ever saw his mother or his brother at that point in time. And so, his own family doesn't see him for 3 or 4 years. So the person that comes back from Russia, okay, is who John suspects is Harvey and not Lee. Okay. Now, I know we're getting into some crazy stuff here. And it's, like I said, it's a very hard idea to wrap your head around. And it requires you to do a research. I can't sit here and convince you of this idea unless you read it for yourself, you see the evidence for yourself, you see the documentation for yourself. And like I said, John Armstrong can explain it a hell of a lot better than I can. David Josephs can explain it a hell of a lot better than I can. This is just a layman's view of the whole Harvey and Lee scenario through my eyes. Because even if it's not true, it still intrigues the hell out of me. And like I said, it's John Armstrong has a hell of a research library. They're online at Baylor University, at the Pogue Library. You can see it online. You can download documents. You can search it thoroughly. And I encourage everyone to do so. It's a great place for a repository of relevant assassination documents that are very, very intriguing, okay? And it's not just about Harvey and Lee. He's got stuff in there on just about every player that you've ever heard of, associated with the assassination. Now, the assertion is that Harvey was born of Hungarian descent to immigrant parents here, because the person that went to and came back from Russia, had a Russian speaking ability that only either a native person would have had, or somebody that had learned the language at a very, very young age, being spoken to by whoever was taking care of him or his parents. I mean, it was like that kind of level. It's not the level of Russian that this guy was speaking is not something you could learn in an 8-month crash course at the Monterey School of Languages. Okay, it's hard enough to get the Russian language down, spoken. You had to get down the written, the spoken. You had to understand what people were saying. You had to understand dialects. I mean, Marina even said he had like a Baltic accent. That she thought he was a native. I mean, it was that good. You don't get that in a couple months in the Monterey School of Languages. This cat, whoever they sent over there, knew Russian. Okay, he knew it. Okay, he pretended like he didn't. And for somebody who can speak a language fluently, it's pretty easy to play dumb. Okay, because John Armstrong also uncovered, I think it was a friend or a maid of Anna Zeiger's, one of Lee and Marina's friends from his time in Russia, and she stated that she never heard Lee Oswald speak Russian. Never. And it was Marina who was translating whatever they were saying into English for Lee. Okay? Miss, I don't know no English. Marina. Okay? Now, we all know Lee spoke Russian. And we all know, hello, Marina speaks English. Okay? It's not a big secret. But, like I said, it's pretty easy to do, to play dumb, even to speak poorly or attempt to speak a language poorly if you know it fluently. I could sit here and play a real good dumb redneck that doesn't really know how to talk and stuff, and I'm going to get down over there. It's not hard to do it from language to language. And so I don't know exactly what the hell was going on over there. I'm sure, it's spycraft at its finest. And, Cold Warrior stuff. And when discussing Harvey and Lee, okay, Harvey is the guy arrested in Dallas. Okay. Now, when you make that assertion, you make that claim, the most obvious next question is this. Well, what in the hell happened to Lee? If that's Harvey, where's Lee? Okay? Now, the popular theory is that Lee Oswald was helping to set up Harvey, his lookalike. Okay? His namesake, his lookalike. And that Lee was the crafty intelligence agent. He was a crafty intelligence agent. He knew exactly what the hell was going on. He knew exactly what he was doing. Okay? And that after the assassination, he was either disappeared, name changed, plastic surgery, or they just offed his ass. It's hard to say. And for the Lee Oswald lived theory, excuse me, I ran across some interesting stuff about a man named Donald Norton. Okay? And this story comes from, I think it's Mae Russell, I think it was John Judge and William Kelly, researchers. And I think Mae was speaking in Ohio somewhere. Had a little speaking engagement there, and said they were leaving the place, and they were approached by this guy. I was like, "Hey, Mae, hey, you remember me? My name's Don Norton. I'm the guy that he had sent her some money, and had wrote her letters." Claiming to be Lee Oswald. Okay, now what happened next is quite incredible, and William Kelly doesn't barely remember this encounter. I mean, he remembers it, but he wasn't in the moment as it was happening. He didn't really realize the significance of what this guy was trying to say or what he was claiming, and they went to a small cafe or whatnot to have a little coffee or whatever, and the guy proceeded to recite, so I forget what it was. I don't know if it was when he was on the radio, like a part of his speech then, or part of his speech from when he went to what's that place? I think it was in Alabama. He went to that place to give a speech. I don't know. But he was quoting word for word, and they said if you really studied the guy, he looked like him, he talked like him, But of course, he claimed his name was Donald Norton, and there were subtle differences, like there had been some plastic surgery or something. And this was in the early 70s, so this would have been almost 10 years after the assassination. Well, the story became something of lore, and I think Mae was pretty much convinced that, damn, this really could be Lee Oswald. And, researchers throughout the years have tried to narrow down who the hell this Don Norton is. And, some claimed he went on to be a fisherman in Florida. And then there was another candidate to be this Don Norton. And it was a fella, he had sandy blonde hair, glasses. I have a picture of him. And, they went so far as to compare, the autographs or the handwriting styles. All kinds of interesting stuff. But I'll post the links for all that stuff up on the 22 November site along with this podcast, so you can check it out for yourself. I urge everyone to read that story by Bill Kelly, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's mind-blowing. You're like, whoa, I had no idea. All this Donald Norton stuff was really intriguing, when I started looking into things. But like I said, I'll post all that up on the website. And speaking of the website, let's take a little hiatus here real quick. Speaking of the website, 22novembernetwork.wordpress.com. Blowing up. We recently had, 2014 for the 22 November Network was big. And I'm talking about 20,000 visitors big. Okay? That's huge. In the 6 months we were up and running, 20,000 people came to the website. 20,000 people read our stuff, listened to our shows. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you to each and every one of you. Okay, it means a lot, and like I told Doug when we first started doing this, I said, look, man, I said, if we get this stuff going on the website, I said, make sure we tag everything that we do, no matter how small, no matter how simple. Make sure we tag every post with relevant information. If my podcast, Harvey and Lee, is about Harvey and Lee, okay, I'm going to tag it. I'm going to tag it John Armstrong. I'm going to tag it Harvey and Lee. I'm going to tag it Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm going to tag it JFK assassination. I'm going to tag it conspiracy theory. I'm going to tag it Donald Norton. I'm going to tag it Bill Kelly. Tag it Mae Russell. Okay, but so when people search for this stuff out there, okay, and they type in Mae Russell, Donald Norton, okay, they're going to find this little podcast on, when they Google it. And they'll become more informed. And they'll go to the website to get the link for the show. And I said, you're not going to believe how much this is going to grow. Okay? And once it gets big enough, it will take on a life of its own. It will be a presence on the internet, a repository of information, a wealth of knowledge that is going to be here in perpetuity. And it's only going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay? That's what it is. And that's what we wanted. We like to spotlight people doing good things and people doing good research. And hopefully that's what you're going to find at the 22 November Network. Now, we started off with 5. We ended the year with 6. Because we thought our man, SR Dusty Road, was doing some great work. On his own, investigating and researching, aspects of the JFK assassination. And you can hear more of Dusty coming up. He was great on the Dallas Action the first time. You're going to hear him very soon again, within the next week or two, I think, on the Dallas Action with Doug. So make sure you check it out. Okay, he's got Dusty coming up, he's got David Josephs coming up, and he's got me coming up. Your boy Rob Clark. Me and Doug talk all kinds of stuff about Fred Lee Chrisman. He wanted to know who the hell Fred Chrisman is. Well, I told him who the hell Fred Chrisman was, and we had a sweet conversation. So make sure you check it out on Doug's show. I'll be on the 11th, of January, coming up. I guess that's next week, roughly. Probably midweek next week. So make sure you check that out. And there's also something else I want to touch on when we're talking about Harvey and Lee here. And that's all the shenanigans going on after the assassination. Okay? When we have the stuff going on at the theater, where we have a witness, of Oswald being, I should air quotes, Oswald being taken out the back of the theater, in an alley and stuffed in a squad car. Okay? Now, we all know Oswald was taken out the front of the theater. At least Harvey, the guy that was arrested. So who the hell was taken out the back of the theater? And why do we not have more interviews with people in the theater other than George Applin? Where's the full list of people who were in that theater? Why is there discrepancies that some police reports say that Oswald was arrested in the balcony of the theater and not on the floor, as we all know about? And, it's been said that you can see Oswald, or there was a Oswald sighting, I guess you could say. I think it was in a red Ford Falcon. Somebody called it in, said it looks just like him. Here's a license plate. Well, it's registered to one of J.D. Tippett's neighbors, Carl Mather, who works at Collins Radio. Little things like this, make this case crazy. And then we get the Robert Vincent story, which is a mind blower. All right. Now, if you haven't heard the Robert Vincent, Dallas getaway story, here it is in a nutshell, because I think he wrote a book called Flight from Dallas or something to that effect. And there's some interviews on YouTube I'll post up too on the website, interviewing Robert Vincent. And he was, just he was in the armed forces. I forget what branch he was in. And he was hitching a ride back to Colorado. And he got put on this transport plane, military transport plane. And so he's sitting there waiting to take off, and here come two other guys in civilian clothes, get on the plane, And he said, damn if one of them didn't look exactly like Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay? You know, and along with another fella. You know, like a Latin type fella. And he said that they made a stop in, was it Roswell, New Mexico? And these two were dropped off. Okay? And then, of course, you know, he went on to Colorado or whatever, and he asked his you know, commanding officer, you know, he's like, man, I was just on a plane with somebody looked almost exactly like Lee Harvey Oswald. He's like, I thought he was arrested in Dallas, you know, and they're like, he was like, look, you didn't see nothing, don't say nothing, you know, you didn't see anything. Nobody would believe you anyway. And he kept quiet for many, many years. And then he came forward with his story. So what the hell was that about, right? Well, it's hard to say. One theory is that it was Billy Seymour and either Lauren Hall or Lawrence Howard, or who knows? You know, so there's that, and then we have the Michael Eddowes fiasco. Okay, with the exhumation of Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay, this big song and dance pony show in the early 80s, okay, where Michael Eddowes had written this book. And in the book, he asserted that the man that came back from Russia was not Lee Harvey Oswald, that he was a Russian agent, okay, and that this Russian agent, you know, supposedly shot and killed JFK, okay. Now, he fought and fought and fought trying to get Marina to go ahead and let them exhume the body and determine whether or not the man in the grave was actually Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, how could they do that? Well, dental records. He had that mastoid surgery behind his ear. He had a scar. Well, I'm sure his body was decomposed, you know, but he had shot himself in the arm. Mainly, you know, we're talking dental records, and you know, we're talking the mastoid surgery. That's where they cut a piece of the skull out from right behind the ear, and you know, of course, it leaves a scar on the skin, but it also damages the skull when they do it. Now, what's interesting is about the exhumation of Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay, is that when Lee Oswald was buried, he was buried in a coffin. How do you say this? I guess it was one of those guaranteed for 1,000 years kind of coffins, to where, you know, it wouldn't let in any rainwater, it wouldn't let in any worms, or it wouldn't decompose for at least 1,000 years guaranteed. Okay, well, it didn't make it very long. Okay, let's see, 63 to 80, maybe 20 years. They went to pull this coffin out of the ground, and the whole damn bottom of it fell out. Okay, the head falls off the body, or is separated from the spine, and everybody's like, that shouldn't have happened. What's up with that? Well, that is a very, very good question. What is up with that? And now I've heard some crazy theories, you know, of people, you know, digging the body up and putting the real head of Lee Harvey Oswald in the coffin and taking the fake one out. Okay, which would lend to the credence to the theory of Lee Oswald not making it too much past November 22nd, 1963. You know, quite frankly, it could have been anybody's head. You know, any corpse's head. You know, they could have did little alterations, whatever. But anyhow, it was determined, and Robert Oswald did fight the exhumation. Okay, he tried to take it to court, but Marina had ultimate say, wife over family. And so she's the one that ultimately allowed for it after Marguerite Oswald had passed away. And they determined the head in there is Lee Harvey Oswald. But of course there's controversy surrounding it, with the supposedly indestructible coffin being, the whole bottom of it basically falling out. The body was very badly decomposed. It wasn't to pure skeleton yet, but there was some muckety muck. I might post some photos of that up there too. Let y'all look at them for them, you grisly photo seekers out there. So, what can we take away from all this? There's theories that Lee Oswald lived past November 22nd, 1963. And in order for that to happen, there had to have been two of them. There's theories out there that no, it was just a double of somebody that looked like him. There was no Harvey and Lee going back to grade school. Yet we have testimony from schoolmates, teachers. There's several interviews online that John Armstrong has with people that knew this little tiny kid that liked to be called Harvey, and they knew this big bully type kid that went by the name Lee, who was getting in fights and stuff and was the biggest kid in his class. Whatever side you fall down on, it's all very, very interesting. And I would urge each and every one of you to go out there and check it out for yourself. Head over to harveyandlee.net for a start, for a taste. And if you like what you're reading, what you're seeing, if it intrigues the hell out of you, buy the book. It is invaluable. If you're a JFK researcher, either way, it's invaluable. So head over there, check out harveyandlee.net. Get read up on the articles, get the book. Look out for David Joseph's coming up on the Dallas Action. Okay, don't want to miss it. There's a couple Facebook groups. Harvey and Lee Cold Warriors, run by David Joseph. There's Harvey and Lee, run by Marty Bragg, and with John Armstrong's blessing. And there's numerous resources, pulling from John Armstrong stuff on the internet. Like I said, you can go to Leno Sanic, you can hear from the man himself. There's also some of the lectures he's given at conferences, or on the internet. All you got to do is seek them out, check them out. So yeah, that in a horrible looking, misshapen wall nutshell is my interpretation of Harvey and Lee. Believe me, it's a mind F. If you really get into it, it's very hard to comprehend and make sense of all of it. And for those that do, and for those that have, it's a very, very, it makes an impact on you. It stays with you. It's something you can't shake. It's something always at the back of your mind. You're like, damn, what about Harvey and Lee? What about Harvey and Lee? What about Harvey and Lee? But, so check it out. Thank you once again, everybody, for listening. I encourage everyone out there to get the Stitcher app. Okay? You can find it in the Google Play Store or on iTunes. Download that. You find me on there. Search for the Lone Gunman Podcast. You will find it. Add me to your favorites list. And then just check back every week, man. You'll see you got a new episode. You can listen on there. I think it streams better than Spreaker, if you ask me. But check us out there. Me and Doug both on Spreaker and Stitcher. 22novembernetwork.com. This sumbitch is in the can up to the satellite, being down directly to your ears. 2015. People, it's your boy Rob Clark. Peace.